Welcome back to Eject Media, where VHS is alive and well, and every tape has a story. Today, we're heading into the grimy back alleys and neon-lit streets of the 70s and 80s, the world of vigilantes, gangs, and revenge-fueled justice. These are the movies that lived on the bottom shelves of the video store, hidden away in cracked clamshells and battered cardboard sleeves. They weren't the blockbusters everyone was renting. They were the dangerous ones. The kind of films your parents didn't want you watching, but you rented anyway. From street wars and brutal payback to grim tales of survival, these films define the raw, unpolished edge of cult cinema. Some became underground legends, others disappeared into obscurity, but all of them captured that unmistakable video store energy. So, grab your popcorn, dim the lights, and get ready for 10 gritty cult classics that prove revenge was always best served on VHS. Vigilante, 1982. Vigilante, directed by William Lustig, is a gritty and emotionally charged revenge thriller that explores what happens when the justice system fails ordinary people. The story follows Eddie Marino, played by Robert Forster, a factory worker whose life is violently upended when a street gang attacks his family. With the police unable or unwilling to help, Eddie is left to confront the criminals on his own. He eventually joins a group of vigilantes led by Nick, portrayed by Fred Williamson. Together they decide to take the law into their own hands and go after the men who terrorize their city. What makes Vigilante stand out is its realistic and uncompromising depiction of urban crime. Lustig does not sugarcoat the violence or the consequences of taking justice into one's own hands. Every scene is tense, with a sense of urgency that keeps viewers on edge. Robert Forster's performance is subtle, but powerful, showing a man push beyond his limits while maintaining his humanity. Fred Williamson brings strength and charisma as the experienced vigilante leader, and supporting roles from Richard Bright and Rutanya Alda add emotional depth and credibility to the story. The direction and Richard Vitera's script work together to create a film that is both intense and thoughtful. The action sequences are raw and visceral, yet the film also pauses to explore the emotional toll that violence and loss take on Eddie. The movie examines the thin line between justice and revenge and asks difficult questions about morality in a society where the system fails its citizens. Vigilante is not just a revenge story. It is a portrait of desperation, grief, and the lengths people will go to protect what they love. It remains a standout of early 1980s urban thrillers and is highly recommended for viewers who appreciate intense character-driven stories that combine action with a real sense of danger. Assault on Precinct 13, 1976. Assault on Precinct 13, directed by John Carpenter, is one of the most influential action thrillers of the 1970s. It is a masterclass in building suspense and creating tension that lingers long after the film ends. The story takes place on a hot summer night in Los Angeles. A police precinct scheduled for closure finds itself under siege by a violent gang. Inside, a small group of officers and civilians is trapped. Lieutenant Ethan Bishop leads the defense with calm determination. He is joined by Napoleon Wilson, a hardened criminal who proves to be a surprisingly reliable ally. With no reinforcements and limited resources, they must hold off wave after wave of attackers. Every hallway, every stairwell, every flickering light adds to the sense of claustrophobia and imminent danger. Carpenter's direction is precise. The film's minimalist setting contributes to the tension, and the haunting synth-heavy score elevates the suspense. Each moment feels charged with anxiety, and even in quiet scenes, there is a sense of unease that makes the action feel even more intense. The pacing is deliberate, allowing character moments to breathe while keeping the audience engaged and on edge. Beyond the siege and the shootouts, Assault on Precinct 13 is a story about loyalty, survival, and the human instinct to persevere in the face of overwhelming odds. It examines the moral complexity of working together when lives are at stake, especially when the lines between lawmen and criminals become blurred. The film's influence on the action genre is undeniable, inspiring countless remakes, homages, and urban siege thrillers in the decades that followed. For anyone who enjoys taut, suspenseful thrillers with memorable characters and relentless tension, Assault on Precinct 13 remains essential viewing. Its combination of smart storytelling, unforgettable atmosphere, and intense action has stood the test of time. Deadbeat at Dawn, 1988. Deadbeat at Dawn, directed by and starring Jim Van Beber, is a raw, uncompromising film that dives deep into gang violence, revenge, and the emotional toll of a life shaped by crime. The story follows Goose, the leader of the Ravens gang, who is ready to leave his violent past behind and start a new life. That plan is shattered when his girlfriend Christy is brutally murdered by a rival gang called the Spiders. Devastated and enraged, Goose embarks on a relentless quest for vengeance. He knows that each step could lead to his own death, but he is determined to see justice done. From the first scene, Deadbeat at Dawn immerses the viewer in chaos. Van Beber's direction is fearless and energetic, capturing the grimy, decayed urban landscape where the story takes place. The violence is stylized but visceral, and the cinematography reinforces the tension, making each confrontation feel immediate and dangerous. Van Beber's performance as Goose is powerful, portraying grief, rage, and determination in a way that drives the narrative forward. The film is a classic of underground 1980s cinema. It is unpolished, unapologetic, and deeply committed to its story. The score enhances the mood, while the gritty setting keeps the tension high from start to finish. Deadbeat at Dawn is about more than action. It is about the emotional weight of loss, the cycle of violence, and the choices people make when pushed to the edge. For anyone who appreciates cult classics with intense action, raw emotion, and a fearless approach to filmmaking, Deadbeat at Dawn is an unforgettable experience that lingers long after the credits roll. Siege, 1983. Siege, also known as Self-Defense, is a tense urban thriller that combines action with social commentary. The story centers on a neighborhood plagued by crime. Frustrated by the increasing violence and the inability of authorities to maintain order, ordinary citizens band together to protect themselves. What begins as a defensive effort quickly escalates into full-blown retaliation, raising questions about morality, justice, and how far people are willing to go when the law fails them. The film captures the gritty reality of urban life in the early 1980s. Each character reacts differently to the crisis, adding depth and tension to the story. The action is relentless, and the claustrophobic setting heightens the sense of danger and urgency. Viewers feel the fear, determination, and emotional stakes of people fighting for survival. Siege is not only an action film, it is a study of courage, fear, and the human response to chaos. The narrative explores the consequences of violence and the blurred lines between right and wrong in desperate circumstances. Its intense, gripping sequences and morally complex characters make it a standout of the urban action genre. For viewers who enjoy street-level thrillers with social commentary and gripping tension, Siege offers a powerful, hard-hitting experience that remains relevant and compelling today. Rolling Thunder, 1977. Rolling Thunder, directed by John Flynn, is a powerful revenge thriller that explores trauma, loss, and the consequences of violence. The story follows Major Charles Rain, played by William Devane, a Vietnam War veteran who returns home after 7 years as a prisoner of war. He finds his life irrevocably changed. A violent home invasion claims the lives of his loved ones and leaves Rane physically and emotionally scarred. Devastated and consumed by grief, he embarks on a relentless quest for vengeance against the men responsible. The film examines the psychological and emotional effects of war and violence. Rane's transformation from a broken, traumatized man into a focused and determined avenger drives the narrative. Tommy Lee Jones plays Johnny Voden, Rane's loyal friend and ally, bringing depth and humanity to the story as they navigate a dangerous path of retribution together. Flynn's direction balances intense action with moments of reflection. The pacing allows for the development of character and emotion while building to climactic confrontations that carry weight and impact. The film also explores themes of morality, justice, and the long-lasting effects of trauma. Rolling Thunder is more than a revenge story. It is a deep and compelling look at the costs of violence and the human spirit's response to loss and injustice. For fans of thoughtful, intense 1970s action cinema, Rolling Thunder remains a powerful and unforgettable classic. Tenement, 1985. Tenement is a high-energy, chaotic thriller that captures the fear and desperation of urban life in the 1980s. The story follows a group of tenants trapped in their apartment building when a gang of criminals begins terrorizing them. Ordinary people are forced to confront extreme violence in order to survive. Each character reacts differently, creating tension and unpredictability throughout the film. Some rise to the challenge, some struggle with fear, and some are pushed past the point of no return. Lawrence Tierney and Tricia Noble deliver strong performances that anchor the film, giving it weight beyond the violence. The setting is claustrophobic, making every encounter feel tense and dangerous. Hallways and stairwells become battlefields, and the sense of isolation amplifies the suspense. Tenement is unapologetically raw and intense. It is a quintessential 1980s exploitation thriller, mixing action, suspense, and social commentary about urban decay and violence. The pacing is relentless, making it impossible to look away. For anyone who appreciates high-stakes thrillers with gritty realism, Tenement delivers a wild and unforgettable ride. Vice Squad, 1982. Vice Squad, directed by Gary Sherman, is a gritty crime thriller that exposes the dark and dangerous underbelly of Los Angeles in the early 1980s. The story follows Princess, a streetwise prostitute played by Season Hubley, who becomes entangled in a dangerous situation after witnessing a violent crime committed by the psychopathic pimp Ramrod, portrayed with chilling intensity by Wings Hauser. When the police enlist her to help take him down, Princess is forced to navigate a treacherous world of crime, betrayal, and personal danger. Vice Squad thrives on tension and atmosphere. The city feels alive with danger at every turn, and the characters are constantly on edge. Hauser's performance as Ramrod is menacing and unforgettable, leaving viewers with a sense of unease that lasts throughout the film. The theme song Neon Slime, performed by Hauser, adds a darkly humorous and memorable layer to the story. Beyond the action and suspense, the film explores survival, morality, and the challenges of making the right choice in a world where danger is constant. Each character is pushed to their limits, and the audience is invited to consider the consequences of violence and crime in society. Vice Squad balances thrilling action with social commentary, creating a tense, compelling, and unforgettable experience. It is a hard-hitting, stylish thriller that remains a significant entry in early 1980s crime cinema. The Exterminator, 1980. The Exterminator is a gritty and intense vigilante thriller that blends action, urban realism, and a dark exploration of trauma and justice. The story centers on John Eastland, a Vietnam veteran and carpenter who becomes a vigilante after his best friend is brutally attacked by criminals. When the authorities fail to hold the perpetrators accountable, Eastland decides to take matters into his own hands. Armed with his carpentry skills and a deep sense of moral outrage, he hunts down the men responsible, leaving a trail of retribution in his wake. Robert Ginty's performance as Eastland is raw and committed. He brings depth and believability to a character who is angry, wounded, and driven by a personal code of justice. The film's urban setting feels tense and threatening, with every street corner and alleyway presenting potential danger. The violence is unflinching, making the stakes feel real and immediate. The film also explores broader themes. It raises questions about morality, justice, and the consequences of taking the law into one's own hands. Eastland is not portrayed as a hero in a traditional sense. He is a man trying to restore balance in a chaotic world, and his actions have both emotional and ethical weight. The Exterminator combines gripping action, compelling character development, and social commentary, resulting in a film that is both entertaining and thought-provoking. For fans of revenge-driven urban thrillers with a dark edge, this film remains a memorable and intense experience. Savage Streets, 1984. Savage Streets, directed by Danny Steinman, is a high-energy 1980s exploitation thriller that combines revenge, action, and gritty urban drama. The story follows Brenda, played by Linda Blair, a tough high school student whose life is thrown into chaos when a gang called the Scars commits a horrific crime against her disabled sister and her best friend. Devastated and enraged, Brenda decides to take justice into her own hands. Her quest for vengeance drives the story, as she confronts the violent underworld of Los Angeles with courage, cunning, and relentless determination. From the very beginning, Savage Streets sets a dangerous tone. The streets are treacherous, and Brenda's world is unforgiving. She is a strong and fearless lead who refuses to let her loved ones suffer without consequences. One of the film's most memorable moments comes when she wields a crossbow in a tense and violent showdown, a scene that has become iconic within the genre. The performances are larger than life, in keeping with 1980s exploitation style. Linda Blair delivers a fierce and commanding performance. John Vernon plays the unsympathetic principal, and Linnea Quigley brings emotional stakes as Brenda's sister. The soundtrack pulses with 80s rock, enhancing the sense of energy and tension throughout the film. Savage Streets does not shy away from its sleazy and shocking elements. Nudity, violence, and over-the-top action all combine to create a memorable cult classic. Beyond the chaos, the film is a story about justice, loyalty, and standing up for the people you care about. For fans of 80s revenge thrillers with a strong female lead, Savage Streets is a wild, unforgettable ride. The Annihilators, 1985. The Annihilators is a fast-paced, action-packed vigilante film that captures the energy and style of 1980s action cinema. The story follows a group of veterans who are frustrated with rising crime and corruption in their city. They decide to take matters into their own hands and become a force the criminal underworld cannot ignore. Confronting increasingly dangerous criminals, they rely on teamwork, skill, and determination to restore a sense of justice to their streets. Robert Ginty and Steve James bring energy and intensity to their roles, making the action sequences feel immediate and high stakes. The film combines over-the-top violence with tight pacing and a sense of urgency that never lets up. Each encounter increases the tension and builds toward climactic confrontations. Beyond the action, The Annihilators examines themes of justice, morality, and the lengths ordinary people will go to when they feel powerless. It is a classic example of 1980s vigilante cinema, blending explosive action with social commentary. For fans of intense urban thrillers, The Annihilators is a relentless and exciting experience. And that's our trip through the darker corners of the video store. 10 gritty cult classics filled with gangs, revenge, and raw street justice. These weren't the polished Hollywood hits. They were the bruised and battered VHS tapes you discovered late at night, the ones that stuck with you long after the tracking lines faded. If you enjoyed this dive into the underground, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment with your favorite vigilante or revenge movie. Don't forget, you can dig even deeper into the world of VHS by checking out our online VHS store at ejectmedia.etsy.com. And remember, always be kind and rewind because every movie is someone's favorite.